All right. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. This is Mr. Huff. We're going to talk about Unit 3, Lesson 7, Non-Legislative Powers of Congress. So we're going to walk through this lesson. So let's get started. Uh, Other than making laws, what else can the representative voice of Congress do? In addition to the express powers, those explicitly stated in the Constitution, and the implied powers, those connected to the express powers, Congress also has non legislative or non lawmaking powers. These critical powers provide important checks on the power of other branches of government. Remember, we talked about the checks and the balances. We're going to talk about how Congress kind of performs those duties here. For example, Congress has the power to amend the Constitution, impeach the president, conduct federal investigation into matters of national importance, that sort of thing. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how the implied non-legislative, non-lawmaking powers of Congress, including amendment, impeachment, and investigation. Okay, so here are some key words: acquit, censure, impeach, perjury, subpoena. Okay. And our objectives define the non-legislative powers of the legislative branch outlined by the Constitution, explain the scope of legislative powers as it relates to amending the Constitution, appointments, investigations, and impeachments, evaluate the powers of the legislative branch in relation to the other branches of government. Okay. Okay, so one of the things that Congress has non-legislative power in is the presidential election process. And so we're going to talk through that a little bit here, and we'll talk a lot more about how presidents are elected in a future unit. But we'll talk a little bit about it here. Okay, so Congress has some special electoral powers. For example, if no presidential candidate receives a majority of electoral votes, the election will be decided by the House of Representatives. So a majority means more than 50%. Okay, it doesn't mean the most number of votes, it means over 50%. If you have just two candidates, of course, then whoever has the most is going to have mathematically over 50%. But if you have more than two candidates, it is possible to receive the most number of votes but not have a majority. Okay. If a candidate doesn't have a majority, then the election is actually decided by the House of Representatives. In that situation, it's unusual, but in that situation, the House of Representatives, Congress, will actually choose the president. And that's outlined all in the 12th Amendment to the Constitution. The 12th Amendment outlines all of that. Okay, and it grants Constitution, grants those powers to Congress in rare situations. Okay. So how does that work? Well, the House must select a president from three candidates with the most electoral college votes. The representatives from each state, no matter how many there are, remember California has a lot of representatives in the House, Wyoming has just one representative in the House, but no matter how big or small, each state, all the representatives meet and they submit a single vote as a state. Okay, so what situations can you think of that would prevent a candidate from receiving a majority of electoral votes? Well, for example, Congress chose two presidents, Thomas Jefferson in 1801, John Quincy Adams in 1825, and one vice president, Richard Johnson, in 1837. In each of those elections, each of those times, what happened is that there was a third candidate. Whenever there was a third party candidate, or in the election of 1824, there were actually four, then it makes it harder to achieve a majority, more than 50%. Okay. The 25th Amendment dictates Congress's electoral powers related to the vice presidency if this position becomes vacant. When this happens, the current president nominates a replacement, and then both houses of Congress must confirm with a majority vote. Okay. Why might it be important that Congress is involved in filling vacancies of the vice presidency? So something to think about. But just look at the big picture here. What's happening is that Congress has checks on the executive power. They have a little bit of check on the executive branch, make sure it doesn't become too powerful. And we're going to see here in a second that they're going to have a check on the judicial branch also. So each of the three branches has checks against each other. Okay. So you can look at this chart or this graph here, electoral duties of Congress. Step one, no candidate receives a majority of the electoral college votes. Look, here in this scenario, we actually had three candidates. One of them won just a very few number, 25 votes. One won 246, one won 267, but neither of them got above 50%. So in that situation, it goes to the House of Representatives. Each state's House delegation must decide which of the top three candidates to support. Each state has one vote in the contest. Failure to agree means that the state loses its vote. Okay, so you could have a lot of members of the House from a state, and they might not all have the same view on who they want to be president. But if they can't decide on a single vote, then the whole state loses its vote. Okay, and step three: a candidate who wins a majority of the votes of the state's delegations wins the presidency. And if no candidate wins a majority of the state's votes, another vote must be taken. They keep doing it over and over and over again until one of these candidates would win. Okay, it's kind of confusing, but it'll make a little more sense when we talk about the electoral process in a future unit. Okay, another thing that Congress can do that's not legislative is impeachments. Okay, the Constitution grants Congress a very important check on the executive branch. It can remove presidents, vice presidents, and civil officers from office for criminal offenses. Okay, impeachment, or bringing formal charges against a public official, is only the first part of a process and has become a partisan political tool. Only the House can impeach, and only the Senate can try the case. Okay, so the way it works, remember, there's two houses of Congress. There's the House of Representatives and there's the Senate. And in the process of impeachment, both has a very specific role. The House has the role of actually impeaching the public official. It could be a president, could be a vice president, could be a judge, but they actually do the impeaching. What that means is they bring formal charges. They officially charge that public official with violating the terms of office. They call it in the Constitution high crimes and misdemeanors. Okay, but either way, the House actually votes to impeach, and then it goes to the Senate. The Senate then has a trial, just like a criminal trial. The Senate would have a trial, and at the end of it, the Senate votes, and the Senate can vote either to remove the person from office, or they can vote to acquit, meaning to say essentially not guilty. And then they can do a couple of other things also that are a little more complicated. But basically, the House impeaches and the Senate does the trial. Okay, that's important. Okay, there are other roles of this of Congress. Okay, let's look at Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. The Senate is given two executive powers, treaties, and appointments. The President shall have the power, and with the advice and consent of the Senate, to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. And the President shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. And that's really kind of confusing language, but basically what it says is that the president nominates someone for these offices, whether it's an ambassador or judge, and then the Senate gets to vote to approve this. Okay, and 2/3 of the senators have to vote to approve a candidate, and this is actually coming up right here. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who sat on the Supreme Court, died just a few days ago, and now President Trump is going to nominate someone to take that spot on the Supreme Court, to become a member of the Supreme Court, and the Senate is going to have to actually meet and decide if they want to approve that person or not approve that person. And it's going to be a very big deal in the news in the coming weeks. So this is all kind of very, very relevant right now. Okay. The other thing that works kind of this way is treaties. So if the president can negotiate some sort of treaty with a foreign country, but it's up to the Senate to vote and approve it. Okay. Another thing that Congress has is the power to investigate. Another important congressional power is the power to hold federal investigations on any matter within the scope of its legislative authority. This is one of the implied powers connected to legislative power. Congress conducts investigations for many different reasons. Oftentimes, investigations are enacted for the following reasons. Here are just some ways or reasons why Congress might launch into an investigation. So they might investigate to gather information for legislation. So they're thinking about, well, we want to have a new law about healthcare. So let's do some investigation. We'll bring in some doctors to come in and testify and tell us more about this particular aspect of healthcare. They might investigate to oversee the operations of executive branch agencies. So they, for example, they might want to bring in someone that works for the Department of State and have them testify so that they can learn more about relations with a foreign country, so that they can know how to vote on a particular treaty that they're considering. Okay. They can investigate to focus public attention on a particular matter, to expose questionable activities of a public official, a private citizen, or a group, or to promote particular interests of some members of Congress. So there are all kinds of ways that they can do investigations. Okay, and you'll actually read a little more about these investigations in this activity. Now, we're not going to go through it here, but this activity here is really, really good. It's slide 6 here, and it takes you through some different investigations that Congress has done over the years and why they did those investigations, how those investigations turned out. It's actually really interesting. So I encourage you to check that out. Okay. And then here's a review activity. Having read about the extent of congressional powers expressed, implied, and non-legislative, you have discovered the influence the legislative branch wields over the executive branch through a series of checks and balances. Again, we started off talking about those checks and balances. That's really the big theme here of this unit. Okay. You may have come to some conclusions regarding why it may be important for Congress to have the powers of investigation, impeachment, appointment, and treaty making. Use your knowledge to answer the following. Okay, so you can read through this, think about that, and this will be a great preparation for the quiz, which comes here on slide 8. All right, guys. Well, hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you very much. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.